Hit record. Hey, Kristin.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, well, most of my things that I cover in the webinar are just about relationships, but namely how to manage and handle and put a name to the crises that we face in kind of the human messiness of our attempts to engage in relationships with other people. So sometimes we cover addiction recovery, infidelity, betrayal, trauma, and other kind of things that surface in relationship. But today, I was thinking, as we're going into 3 months of this pandemic coronavirus crisis, is that I think we, whether we are struggling with a relationship crisis, whether we are struggling with the geopolitical, environmental struggles, the climate, politically, socially, and just the general threat level of this COVID issue, that many of us have children, and we're trying to navigate our lives and trying to navigate our kids' lives at the same time. So the book that I was going to use today is really great. I'm actually a big fan of this guy in general. It's The Power of Showing Up by Dan Siegel. And by the way, everything that we talk about in association to how we can parent kids can also be applicable to how we can kind of almost parent ourselves. So a lot of the things that I'm going to go over here about what we can do when our kids are in a state of struggle, when we're all in a state of struggle, you can also reflect and apply it to when we're personally in a state of struggle. You know, there's some schools of thought that we have our own inner child within us that's sometimes screaming out and looking to be loved, and you know, it's sometimes that inner child screaming out that goes to those unhealthy coping skills of substances and sexually acting out. And so if you don't have children, I think I'd encourage you to listen to it in the context of that as well. So Dan Siegel, just really quick, is an interpersonal neurobiologist. Him and Alan Shore are significant, you know, kind of famous UCLA professors on the topics of what they call attachment science. You might know it as attachment theory and interpersonal neurobiology. So essentially they look at relationships and struggles and mental health issues in the context of how our brains develop and are structured around our initial relationships, so the very beginning of our relationship, so in utero and beyond, and how essentially our brain adapts to the information that were received in the context of relationships. And the goal is always what we call secure attachment, because if we experience secure attachment to others, so not just our moms or dads, but the caretakers and coaches and teachers that we experience in life, science shows that those who are securely attached, actually, let me write that. The longitudinal research on child development clearly demonstrates that one of the very best predictors of how any child turns out in terms of happiness, social and emotional development, leadership skills, meaningful relationships, academic and career success is whether they developed security from having at least one person who showed up in their life. Across cultures, across the globe, these studies reveal a universal finding about how we can parent well, if not flawlessly. So, because basically they're saying that the foundation of so many of our abilities to cope through things like this crisis all come around, do we have secure attachments with other humans? And it's not just supposed to be one single human, it's supposed to be a village. And that provides us the ability to be resilient to these kind of stressors and conflict, to be able to engage in reciprocity in other relationships, so even relationships, to be able to regulate and soothe ourselves. So when stuff goes down and we feel our neurobiology kind of go into anxiety stress mode, are we using healthy ways to kind of down regulate that system? Are we flexible, you know, as this world changes on a weekly basis? Do we find ourselves really getting stuck, or are we like, okay, so today is masks. Okay, tomorrow is not masks. Okay, today we can have 10 people around us. Now we have to be in isolation. And then also empathy and compassion. Can you come to these moments of intensity? Can you come to these moments of adversity and conflict with other people and be able to see them as other humans who are in pain and struggle, and develop skills to have empathy and compassion for them when we're faced with those really deep, intense struggles? So this should actually be a relieving book, not a shaming book, because he's not saying it's about the way that you, a specific way that you discipline. Do you do timeouts or do you not? What language you use. He's just basically saying science shows if you show up for your child consistently, that even if you screw it up, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, that you can still create a secure attachment with you and your child. So let me talk about that. So let me go back for a second. I'm a parent of 3 kids, and I'm constantly struggling with literally showing up for my children. I struggle with being present with them because I'm a type A person who's constantly making lists. Now that we're in this really high stress intense mode, I have, my mind is very distracted by lots of other things, the news, how to run and adjust my business, the extreme wants and needs of my clients right now, because everyone's really struggling. That it's hard for me, and I want to go to those go-to numbing places like my phone or just running away to down regulate my overdrive high anxiety right now. So I have to make a very purposeful effort that when they're asking me questions, when they're talking to me, to make sure that my phone is down, that I'm making eye contact with them, that I'm showing that I'm hearing them, that I'm asking them questions. And we'll go over that a little bit more in a minute. So I just want to validate that now more than ever, trying to stay present and show up and be there for your kids. There's just so many obstacles, similar to the several other videos I said about how that's going to be difficult in your primary relationship as well. But it's okay, because he's created 4 S's for how to show up. And those 4 S's are to be safe, to create. So the 4 things that he says that you need to show up for your children are safety, to have them feel like they've been seen, to soothe them, and to create an environment of security. So basically, to create a safe environment is not that you need to fill them, wrap them in bubble wrap and make sure that nothing bad happens to them, but that they have to have a general understanding that, these are things that are safe, these are things that aren't safe, this is okay, this isn't okay. My mom or dad or caretaker doesn't want bad things to happen to me. They care when I'm hurt or when bad things happen to me. We try our best to make home a haven, a safe spot. So you also need to make sure that if they're experiencing bullying or judgment or shaming words outside in that world, which by the way, we all are right now, even adults, that we try our best to not make it in the home, right? Try to keep joking and sarcasm to a minimum, judgment, you coulda, woulda, shoulda done this, shaming concepts, etc. That they feel safe when they're protected physically, emotionally, and relationally. Seen. Pay attention to them. They, interpersonal neurobiologists and other relationship type therapists, psychologists like the word attunement. So it's basically saying that you are paying attention to their body and what's going on. The best example I can think of is that the other day, my family was debating, should we go for a walk? Should we go play tennis? Should we go to get physical activity with all of us? One of my children, when we decided we were going for a walk, started actually breaking down and crying, which is obviously a really strong response to something that was very simplistic. So with my attunement skills, because I know this child, I know that she doesn't tend to go to this response, and I'm in tune to her, I'm like, wow, she must be really overwhelmed with things just other than whether or not we're going to go for a walk or play tennis. So it's time for me to kind of take a break, engage with her, and find out what's going on. I think our knee jerk reaction is to be like, it's just a walk, dude. Just put your shoes on and let's go. Let's stop crying, right? Because we're just trying to get through the day like everybody else. But that's the example that he's giving, is that it's really important that you constantly put it through the context of, I know my child, this means that they're struggling over something. I don't really want to stop and take a second to kind of get curious and find out what's going on, but I need to. And actually he uses another acronym, because he's acronym happy, to be seen, to see your kids appropriately. It's another acronym, PART: presence, attunement, resonate, and trust. So it's basically be there, eye contact, I'm listening, attune, I'm paying attention to what's going on with you, what's going on with me. I understand that. Resonate, saying, you engage them and say, wow, this is really hard. You normally don't react this way. What's going on? And resonates when they say, like, yeah, I'm having a really hard time today. I don't want to do anything. I want to numb out to TV or YouTube or something. And this isn't what I want. And then trust is also the word he uses to basically say that there's a safety in the space to be able to share what they're really thinking and feeling, right? So I'm really mad at you when you suggested that. I'm really angry that you did this or that. So basically there's an understanding that we can have different opinions, but share them still. The other two S's are soothed. And personally, I work in addiction. And this is, I think, one of the more important things is, there's some schools of thought that these addictions that we go to, the gambling, the drinking, the sexually acting out, the porn, etc., that these are ways that we have learned adaptive skills to downregulate or upregulate our neurobiology. Because at some point, when we were given these stressors and we felt this overwhelming neurobiology of anxiety or stress or hurt or pain or constant feelings of unsafety and insecurity, and I can't trust other people, I found that, viewing porn it's like or I found shopping online constantly, or I found that gambling or drinking were things that down-regulated me. And so I keep going to that go-to skill instead of going to the scariness of another human, because that's, basically attachment theory would say, because I learned back then, if I go to someone to get my needs met, I'm not going to get my needs met there. So I need to be adaptive and kind of on my toes and learn how to do it myself. So soothing, in my opinion, is extremely important. And that's when there's a trusted relationship, they understand that they can go to you when they're hurting and struggling. It doesn't mean that you stop them from experiencing the pain and suffering. In fact, parenting is not ever about preventing adversity or conflict. I think they call those the bulldozer parents, that bulldoze out all trials and tribulations and kind of make it an easy, smooth path for kids to make it without any struggles. So we want them to struggle and be in pain and find out that people have different opinions than them, and sometimes life doesn't go their way, and sometimes in this relationship between me and my children, I'm a messy, broken human being and I do messed up things. But we want them to build skills to know that you can count on other human beings to go to when you're in a vulnerable state of hurt and pain. And you can say, I really need a hug, or can we talk about this? Or I just need to be really kind of feel weak and broken down and bawl my eyes out for a minute and not have you make fun of me for it, or something like that. But, there's lots of ways, healthier ways that we can learn to soothe. And we help their brains develop when we help them soothe. Security, help them develop confidence and a sense of empowerment. So don't think, again, bars on the window, chains, kind of security, guns in the house. It's that they feel this resiliency, that we give them the tools to be solution focused and to give them the idea that you're going to meet adversity. So you're going to have an issue with your best friend and she might post something hurtful on social media, or dad or I might say something really mean and unfair to you, and that you're going to have the skills, the confidence and sense of empowerment to show up for yourself and advocate for yourself. But the way that they learn that is through role modeling of me doing it for myself. And do think about that in the context of your current marriage, right? Because a lot of you chiming in are in some very serious relationship issues. And remember, children are watching, and see the way that you're showing up with your ability to feel like you have some solutions, that you have some ability to be resilient, that there's some level of ability to be empathic and compassionate with all these kind of issues going on. A lot of people, it's not feel like you have, there's not a time and place to feel like you've been victimized and hurt, and validate that, but also know that it can be very powerful when you're able to change the story, to better understand the full context of what's going on. Because that actually brings me to the point of two really important studies that I hold on to. So I have 3 kids. I work with addicts and people who struggle all the time, and it always comes back to the family, right? It does. It's just mom, dad, this. And I sit there in these groups with these people and I'm like, God, it's not a matter of like, if I hurt or I damage my children, or if I fall short. I'm currently in this moment falling short. And there are these concepts, like Freud had these concepts called empathic failures, that there's supposed to be these times that you do fall short, because it creates these opportunities where you can demonstrate to them that life's not perfect, that life can have trials and tribulations and hurt and adversity. And I'm going to fail for you sometimes, but there's always these opportunities for repair work that we have to engage in. We don't leave it on the ground. We don't go, oh, well, I blew that, and then you don't come up, deal with it. Because so much research shows that children who are successful, who can manage life, who can engage, like he lists, good, healthy relationships, have flexibility, have success academically, have confidence, etc. It's not about how much trauma that they've been through. So they could have been experienced physical abuse, sexual abuse, traumatic historical things around them. I have kids who were present in the heart of the city of New York City during September 11th and have a lot of PTSD around that. So it's not about trauma that they've been exposed to. It's about the fact that they had whether or not they had the opportunity to acknowledge the trauma, process it, and kind of better understand the full context of the trauma. So it's not about the trauma you experienced, but how you ultimately have been able to make sense about what's happened. So please remember that. This is the really important thing, because I know I'm talking to a lot of people who are in a lot of relationship pain with your primary partner. And the age of your kids is really gonna determine what kind of language you use or how much you inform them. But kids know that stuff's going down in the household. They see the crying, they hear the anger, they pick up the energy of people being hurt and angry, or dad leaving or mom leaving, etc. And so please don't ignore the elephant in the room. They're going to write some kind of story in their head, and children are first and foremost very egocentric. So they're going to write a story that I did something bad, or people are really scary, or this is what happens. Humans leave with no explanation and I have no control over it. So why ask other people for help or anything like that? You need to provide them some context about what is going on. And do try, in a lot of the research about divorcing, and when you're talking to kids about it, we're talking to kids about spouses or exes, to remember that the kids, we have neurobiological bonds first and foremost to connect and be loved by our parents. Our parents' connection is very important to us. So if you start talking about how your spouse, who might have cheated on you or is an addict, and you uncovered this horrible stuff about him or her, and you paint them to be the devil and a demon, the child views that person as half him or her, an extension of him or her. So sometimes, a lot of the articles around that topic say, just be very careful, that your dad's the devil, or your dad's a horrible liar, or he's a bad person, because sometimes they'll internalize it as, well, he's half me, so I must be half the devil, I must be half a bad person. And that's where the ability, like talking to child therapists or doing some more reading on this, can help you kind of use words to say, mommy is really hurt and sad right now. Daddy and I are having some fights and things aren't going on. I'm really hurt by some things that daddy said. It has nothing to do with you. I love you very much, and we love you very much. But right now I'm crying because that's what happens when people get in fights with each other. It's very sad when things like this happen to our family, and let them know it's okay for you to be sad too. Like, this is probably really scary for you that dad's not living in our house anymore. Would you want to tell me about that? And kind of give them the invitation to say and do that. So final comments are just, this is something that he pointed out. Oh, here's something really good about another acronym for how to engage them. Is he uses another acronym, COLE: curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love. So if and when you do broach this relationship crisis that's going on in your life with the kids, and again, it's going to need to be age appropriate, right? You're not going to be able to have these conversations with 3 or 4-year-olds, but maybe 10, 11, 12-year-olds, and definitely teenagers. Try to approach it with curiosity. So meaning asking them what's going on for them, asking even yourself, gosh, sometimes I get really scared not knowing what's going to happen, and that's okay. We can be scared together and find our way through this. Openness, acceptance, and love. I love you. I'm okay with you being sad and angry sometimes because this is a scary time. Something that's really important that he pointed out, and try to remember this as you're going through this crisis, is that developmentally, our kids' brains aren't developed yet. We have our prefrontal cortex are fully developed from 18 to 25 years old. And that's where our ability is to soothe ourselves, make good judgment, think of consequences. So that's kind of why that's like adulthood for us, is we can properly process through what good choices are, etc. And until then, we're supposed to be that. We're like our children's prefrontal cortex. So that's why we help them make, this is a bad decision, don't stick your hand in the garbage disposal, things like that, because they just can't think of it. I mean, I have a 3-year-old right now, and it's like mind-blowing how many times a day he would die if we weren't around him. But we're supposed to be that. It's my job to make a safe environment for him, to see him, to soothe him, to help him feel secure. It is not our children's job to do that for us. In fact, if we do that, we can be creating a vicious cycle of insecure attachment issues, and that's a whole other subject. I have if you're interested about attachment theory, I have a couple other webinars on how attachment issues as children can lead to adult problems with relationships. So just try to remember that you can be in deep pain, you can be in deep fear, etc., but you need to be seeking out adult support for you to feel safe and secure and soothed, etc. That's why again, I always say groups are so important. 12 steps, support groups, healthy friendships, healthy family members. So let me just give you some really quick things. So just remember, you can screw up. In fact, you probably might have been listening to this and be like, ooh, I kind of screwed up on that one. You get to always go back. In fact, these screw ups are a perfect example to your children that we can engage in the messiness of human interaction. We can have adversity. Mom can blow it. I can blow my top. I can get really angry at you, and I can still come back and say, you know what? I do need you to take out the trash. I am tired of telling you that over and over again, but I shouldn't be yelling at you the way that I did. I should be able to say it in a kinder way. But you also should be able to be at the age where you start thinking, okay, I have responsibilities and there's going to be consequences for if I have to keep telling you the same thing over and over again. And that's the beautiful thing, is you can always go back. It doesn't take the seriousness of why you were angry in the first place, right? Like, they still need to take the trash out. It doesn't make it okay. They still can't hit their sister, or, do this or that, or not do their homework. But you can always own that, yeah, I'm sure when I came in and I screamed at you really loud, that had to be really scary. I don't want you to feel scared like that. In fact, it's not okay. No, I don't want anyone ever screaming at me that way. I hope you're not ever okay with someone screaming at you. So please, like, I'm sorry. And I still need you to do this, but the way I did it is not okay. I'm going to work on doing it better. And then also, so make sure you're role modeling those kind of things to them. And show them that you can role model healthy regulation and soothing for yourself, or using other people to help you soothe and get help and support. Narrate for them. They're not going to have a full library of emotions and fully understand what's going on for them. So sometimes you might say, like with that walk, when my child was upset, I was like, wow, this isn't about the walk. Like, it sounds like you're really upset or overwhelmed or having a hard time. And, I tried to hug her, because there's lots of feel-good hormones that come out when you are being touched and hugged, and that can help with soothing and down regulation, which is another problem with this COVID social distancing thing, is we miss human touch and the healing and calming effects that can happen from things like that. And then express wants and needs very clearly, and ask them, I need to use better ways of telling you things. I need to say things in kinder way. I need you to do that too. I don't want you to use sarcasm or roll your eyes at me or yell at me for things. You're teaching them that relationships can be mutual and have a reciprocity to them, and they have a voice and empowerment in them. And just don't ignore the elephant in the room. They know these things that are going on. If you're talking about them in closed doors, or on the phone with your friends, or they see your Instagram post, or the news is on, they know this stuff is happening. So find a healthy language that you think they can manage, and try to explain it to them, and try to explain the story to them as best as you understand it, so they can start writing the story in their head. Because remember, it's not about the damage and the trauma and the negative experiences that they've been through that will lead to their behaviors and attachment and behaviors in the future. It's the story that they end up writing, their ability to wrap their brain around it and understand it, that impacts them the most. And that's it.
That's so helpful, and thanks for just sharing your reality too. It's, I think one of the things, I was laughing because my youngest child is an adult, and one of the stories that came up for me was like, it was like she was in second grade, and I was like this failure as a mother, and she used that for a long time. And then finally she said, Mom, because she would bring it up and I would just go, oh. And she said, here's what I did. She said, I am so proud of I was late picking her up, and she had her arms full, and so and I told her she'd taken treats, and I was like, don't leave my container there. And she had her little pumpkins. And anyway, so she's walking home, and she had to like carry one thing and set it down, go back, carry another thing. And so it was like 4 times longer to get home than it would have been, and she did it. But she was like, she learned resiliency. She learned problem solving. So even though I had this huge shame about, like, I was a total failure as a mother because I, abandoned my child, she used it as a learning thing. And, she's a very secure, independent, adult. And so I was thinking, what a gift we give our children when we don't pretend we're perfect. When we show them our, our messy, as you said, our messy sides, but also show them, the love and, here's how I'm trying to do it better, so I don't have to be perfect, but I do have to work on doing things better. And I'm not going to always do it, but, but I try. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were talking about their family situation in a small town was there was a lot of drama in the family, and so everybody in town knew it. And they shared that there were enough people in the community that stepped in. So like you were talking about, it doesn't have to just be the parents. It takes a village. It really is. If you get enough from people, like it's kind of this patchwork of, I got this from this person and this from this person. And in the same conversation with that friend, they said the best advice I ever got, on relationships is that I can't be all things to one person and they can't be all things to me. And I thought that's really so important, that we need to have that whole system of, where we get support. And I'm thinking, as you're talking about being a parent in these, it's always challenging being a parent, but these are unique and extra stressful times. And how, if I don't have the bandwidth with me, if I don't go get filled up, in my support system, like you said, from adults, then I can't even see that my child is, going, I don't want to go for a walk. I would just be like, so I really need to have that, to make sure I'm doing self-care, which is another thing to model for our kids, is like,
yep.
Yeah, I just need to take a little time out. I need you to, read a book and, whatever. I just need to, take care of me so that I can come back and take care of you, so,
Yeah.
But so, I was thinking, the self-soothing, I use all the time, a maladaptive coping skill. And I think with addiction, we absolutely, we figure out things that work for us until they don't, because then all of a sudden what worked for us has turned on us and is now the problem. But it really is just a symptom of those underlying problems, because we didn't figure out how to soothe in a healthy way, how to get our needs met in a healthy way, elsewise. Oops, as my
while you're saying that, I wanted to add to another really important part, because obviously a lot of the people that are chiming in here probably didn't come from a secure attached environment, just by the way, because the percentage of the people in America, they've done studies, is really low, that where there's secure attachment. So it's not exactly all over the place to begin with. But the beautiful thing that Dan Siegel and like Alan Shore and all them emphasize over and over again is that the brain is more plastic than they originally thought. They thought the brain was what it was, that the wired neurons, fired a certain way or were destroyed in this way or that way. And now they find there's far more they call neuroplasticity than they knew, because they have now those more detailed brain imageries. And I know Rob talks about that sometimes too, about the repair work you can do post-drug use and stuff like that, and being addicted to porn or something like that. But even if you did not experience secure attachment, even if you struggle with going to unhealthy coping skills, soothing skills, etc., and now you're maybe not showing the kids how to do that in the best way, we can rewire our brains. It takes a boatload of work. And a lot of reinforcement and doing it over and over again, hence the beauty of 12 steps, but we can do it. And you could have come from a insecure attachment with really poor coping skills and now go back and create a completely different experience for your children. So there's hope there, always.
And you don't have to do it perfectly. They have to get enough. And, if they're just getting enough, they're, lots of kids have less than storybook, growing up, but get enough, even if it's from the village, to be securely attached and everything else. So you were talking too about our kids can't be our support. And I unfortunately hear from too many people, are mother enmeshed men, or, were parentalized by their mother or father. And, that's such an unfair, because first of all, then they can have no needs. And then they, at the very young and inappropriate age, have to be an adult, so highly problematic. So if you are a parent that is, doing that to your kids, please get help for you and help for them. So you, like Kristin saying, you can break the cycle, that's what we're giving.
And it's not meant to, I don't want to say that in a shaming way. Like it's very similar to why an alcoholic grabbed at the alcohol to begin with, is it's your children are probably the safest people around. And so it's like, they love me no matter what. So why wouldn't I go to a source that's safe to be vulnerable, to get soothing, etc.? The only thing is I hope now you understand, as their brains are developing, you need to be the one doing that for them instead of the reverse of that. And so I understand why people go to their children for that. And I hope you understand why it's not healthy. And there's a lot of other options. That's why people go to animals then, because that's kind of the next safest thing. Is they're there, they're present, they're you know, they can meet your needs. That's why dogs and emotional support pets are so big. God, other things, these support groups to women and men who've been through very similar stories to what you've been through, so you don't feel any kind of shame or judgment. And then, like I said, healthy friends, healthy family members who don't shame you, who don't tell you what you're supposed to be doing with your marriage or your life, that can just sit and do those 4 S's kind of with you, help you feel safe, help you feel non-judged, can soothe you, allow you to cry, to, you know, things like that. You know, and those 4 S's, none of those S's are like, tell somebody what to do, boss them around, shame them. You know, one of the 4 S's is shame them and say, well, if you done this, if you had sex with them enough, or if you did this
Yeah.
is that, and then you'd be better. So just be careful of that.
Well, and I think it was really helpful I had not thought of the framework that you shared with, kids. Like, I just know how important it is not to demean the other parent. I mean, they're still their parent. But I hadn't thought, oh, I'm half that person. And so that, about the internalizing, that, oh, if they are doing this, then I must be doing that too. And I must be, so flawed. I've always had it at a different level where it's more, like they don't need to know that level. They understand the undercurrents, and understanding, we're struggling right now, it's not your fault. We're working on this, I'm looking for that, I hate when I hear, well, they need to know, what their father has done, or mother or whatever. But, and I just go, that's a burden for that the kids, don't need to take on. And, really looking at how can we protect our kids and still take care of our needs is, it's a challenge, but there are resources.
Yeah. And, again, for someone who works in addiction treatment, I will say, with the older kids who show the capacity to understand, I am always amazed at how, when my clients come in and maybe they've had recent issues or long-term issues with addiction, and then we often take family histories. And you don't have to go deep into their family history to find out that, often addiction is genetic. And how often they had no idea that their uncle died of cirrhosis of the liver, or that grandpa was a raging alcoholic. And I really think that we are harming our children, or at least not allowing that repair and rupture opportunity to show them, like, have conversations. I always tell friends or family or other people that if you have addiction in their family and they're getting to the age of high school where they're going to start wanting to drink or social drink or experiment with things like that, to kind of put that little mustard seed in their head that, hey, just so you know, our family is kind of genetically wired to not experience and metabolize alcohol the same way other people are. I mean, now they know, they do so much genetic research on how certain body types metabolize and experience alcohol or drugs, and there is a difference. And so I just feel like you are not improving the situation by keeping family secrets. And to tell them in appropriate context, like, our family struggles with this. My family, sadly, we have pancreatic cancer in our family. It's a very deadly cancer.
Yes.
But we can't deny that there's some kind of metabolic disorder. There's something wrong with the way that our family processes sugars. And so when my kids want to plow out to, sugar, I just kind of make it clear to them. I don't want to be like the Debbie Downer that's like, hey, sorry, no cupcakes for you. But I just allow them the education of saying, hey, sadly, we're a family that just we have diabetes, we have pancreatic cancer, we struggle in this area. Like our genes are just, we don't handle sugar the same way that other people might handle it. And just so they have that context, that understanding when they're going into making these choices.
And I think what you said was exactly right on. With our daughter, I had those conversations. Like,
Yeah.
she knows my history, to enough of a degree, and she's a complete lightweight with alcohol. So she somehow missed that, but great. But she had the knowledge, and it was always. And if you're going to choose to drink or not, but if you ever need help, no judgment, I will be
Yeah.
here to help you. I'm just saying they don't need to know. And your father screwed this, his secretary. And I mean, like, the level of detail,
Right.
it's you can never unsay it. So so you can always say more eventually. But particularly with sex addiction and betrayal, it's like, people don't want to know about their parents' sex life anyway. So
Mm-mm.
to have those, it just ends up being difficult. You've got some questions.
Yeah.
How can I respectfully and constructively communicate to my husband that I feel that he is being selfish or treating me unfairly by not considering my needs, feelings, and focusing solely on his needs and feelings? I'm worried he will hear the term selfish or unfair as criticism of his behavior, but I think it is important to be honest about how his actions are making me feel. What is a good way to ask him to consider my perspective, how his actions are impacting me?
I think if you watch my videos, you're going to hear this a million times, which I love the starting point of the story I'm telling myself. So, because it's just a really non-defensive making way of approaching how people's behaviors are impacting me. So, if I, let's say if it's that I want to go to couples therapy because I'm really struggling in the relationship, and he's saying it's too expensive and he doesn't feel like it. But then at the same time, you see him spending money on vacations or toys or boats or home improvement stuff. You could say, and you can feel it in your body, like as you feel the resentment build up as he buys that new power tool, is because if you really chimed in and were in tune to what's going on in your head, the story you're telling yourself is that, and I'm making this up, but so you can go spend money on power tools and that's important to you. But when a wife that you've hurt and harmed by your behaviors and choices asks you to spend some money on going to a place where I feel like we're going to be able to repair and talk about things that I wanted to talk about so desperately, and you say that's too expensive, the story I tell myself is I'm just not that important to you. The story I tell myself is that you don't want to help me heal. Um, and so you have to have those uncomfortable conversations. And when you're asking about my perspective, how his actions are impacting me, I use that saying, the story I tell myself, because that helps me. It's not me saying, you're spending too much on power tools, I want to go to couples therapy. You can just say, when you do that, when I watch you do that behavior, when I watch you say 12-step meetings are stupid and I don't believe in them, the story I tell myself is that you don't want to change, that you're comfortable with who you were and what you do and how you treat me and how you behave with me. And that makes me sad because it's not okay. And I don't want the same way of life. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that is a helpful way. I think, Dr. Robb has talked about having structured time. So, every,
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday at 7 p.m. we have
Mm-hmm.
time. So it's a known time and it isn't just, kind of happening all the time. You did not share where you are in the recovery process. And please understand that early in the recovery process, it's about someone learning empathy and feelings that didn't, that's a foreign topic. So it's a learning curve, and it takes time, not justifying,
Right.
but also, I mean, if you're saying, oh, he's been in recovery for 2 years, then that's a completely different conversation of like, this is, 2 months in. So having perspective, but I do like the story I'm telling myself, because you go, well, I hear that that's the story you're telling, but here's what then it's a discussion, and it doesn't have to elevate to a fight, so to speak. So, okay, the
Yeah,
next.
it's not you do this or you do that, and I'm angry at you. It's
Mhm,
this is how I experience your behavior.
yeah. The next question is, if I feel a therapeutic separation is necessary or just need space, especially prior to formal disclosure, how do we navigate this without further disrupting the kids who are 11, 12, and 13? Do many couples work in-house solutions?
That's a really hard one. So many determiners would inform that decision, right? So it'd be like what I know couples that go through formal disclosures that aren't don't really scream and yell, and it's not that kind of like getting ready to blow up situation. And so sometimes they can stay in the same house and they can still engage. Um, but I think that's really what you have to ask yourself when figuring out a therapeutic separation, because you do have 3 kids, 11, 12, 13, and they're quite aware of what's going on. I can tell you that at those ages, is to really find out how safe and copacetic the home environment can be with all this going on. And of course, if you decide to move forward with a therapeutic separation, make sure it's not just spouse was there 1 minute, spouse was gone, and that there's actually discussion and that this is a plan, because they are not going to understand therapeutic separation. They're just like, spouse was there, spouse was gone, lots of yelling, what's happening. And so kind of lay it out, because again, so they can write the story in their head that if the intention is to separate in order to calm the situation and create a little bit more harmony and safety as we figure out how to move forward, and I can get like my brain back online again to make like the next healthy decision, because the stress and threat level of this is just too much for me to operate in. That the intention is to then work towards healing and repair, because mom and dad have a lot of issues and problems right now, and we're trying to make sense of them. Yeah, and so you can definitely write a story around it to help them better understand what's happening, so they can feel safer, even if the spouse is out of the home, to say, okay, but this is what they're doing. They're going to be going to twice a week therapy, talk about it. I'm going to see mom cry. I'm going to see dad angry. But I understand what's happening while it's happening. It's going to be very uncomfortable and I'm not going to like it, but at least now I won't be confused about what's happening.
Yeah, I think the volatility is one of the things I keyed in with what you're saying, Kristin. And
Right.
lots of couples do navigate an in-home separation, but I think it's if you're able to engage in that in a constructive way that isn't so volatile and causing everyone to be on eggshells, great. And if it really is, we really need the space, having the discussion and having a plan, makes a lot of sense. So, but there was something, how do we navigate this? Or do we need space, or just need space, especially prior to formal disclosure? And I think that's key, is like, what do you need? And
Right.
how can you get support, around that? So it is logistics, but I think keeping in mind, if the current environment is very contentious, then like physically being not in the same house makes a lot of sense. So, Okay, the next question. If we are rebuilding our relationship as our spouse recovers from porn addiction and the children have been exposed to anger during the addiction, a betrayed partner who was upset, etc., what should you tell the kids at this point? Do you let them know that you were facing addiction, or simply tell them you and dad are having problems? If kids tend to own half the problem, as in feeling they must be bad if dad was addicted, is it better not to disclose any problem?
Well, the most important thing is the age and the appropriate, like the emotional appropriateness level for these kids to kind of take that on. Um, so, I mean, I definitely am not like a child therapist, or a child guru. I'm very flawed parent myself.
You're doing a great job.
But I err on trying to tell them as much as I can say without giving details. So anyone who's familiar with disclosures, right? It's like helping the betrayed partner understand what was going on. You know, when the partner was acting out, partner was supposed to be at that birthday party, was supposed to be returning my phone calls, was traveling for work. I don't need to know the deep details, you know, so I can picture it in my mind. So it can definitely be, you know, I've had some clients say dad's had a lying problem. Mommy's asked him to tell him the truth several times and he's chosen to lie, and you know it's not okay to lie. So I'm very hurt and sad, and it can be an opportunity to show your children boundaries of like how spouses should be treated, and what mutual relationship should look like. And you know, boundaries are what's okay and what's not okay, and you can share a very benign version of what you've experienced that's not okay, and you guys are working on you know, fixing those boundaries. That mommy's, you know, asked for things to change in the house that have been really hurtful to her, and we're seeing it if those changes can happen. And then again, I also always give permission to have emotions, right? You never want the children to feel scared or hurt or sad, and for you to frankly feel like you need to hold back your emotions, not expect them to soothe them or fix them, but just let them know like, yeah, this situation's scary and sad for me, so I might cry and it's okay. You know, I call Susie, she helps me through this. I go for walks and it helps me feel better. But this is sad. You know, it's normal for this stuff to be sad.
Yeah, I think the key is, you know, age appropriate. And, you know, I'm reluctant to, you know, share porn addiction or whatever,
Right.
you know, because that, hey, and I've had parents say, well, the kids asked. And I was like, just because they ask doesn't mean you tell them everything, you know.
Yeah.
Well, they deserve to know. No, like I know that was really from the place of, you know, I want to get him. And, you know, like
Right.
if you can just step back and, you know, go, I don't want, you know, I don't want my kids to be burdened by anything that they don't have to. And, you know, and if you can really understand that addiction is a mental health issue, and it's
Right.
so personal and it hurts so bad,
So
but at the
personal.
end of the day, it's the brain is hijacked, you know, and it's not an excuse, it's a reason. But, you know, and there is, you know, like that only buys them so much room because they have to do something about it, you know. So you know, but you know, if it's like the moral, like if they had cancer or diabetes, would it be, you know, like, but you know, the kids need to know because he's a horrible person or whatever. And I'm using gender specific and I don't mean to, but for purposes of this, it's easier to go he, you know, as the addict and she as a partner, but we understand that that is just a generalization. So please
Yes.
take that, you know, in context. But, you know, so you know, we are the adults, even when we're at our most vulnerable and hurt, you know, if we can just go, we want to protect the kids. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to go to call Susie, you know, that, but less is better, you know, get a qualified therapist involved, you know, as needed to support the conversations, if needed. But, you know, we want to protect the kiddos. So hopefully that's helpful. So So I think that's the end of the questions, and we're almost out of time. So I wanted to share, we do have a work group which goes through the Sex Addiction 101 workbook. It's a 90-minute session for 6 weeks. We started one last week, and we've got another one starting July 1st. It's not therapy, it's not treatment, but it's a structured time to work through the Sex Addiction 101 workbook for men. It's just for men. We will have some other options for work groups online. Again, does not replace therapy or treatment, but is a supplemental opportunity. I've had lots of people say, well, I have that book, and I'm going, have you read it and have you worked through it? And those are two different things, because I can have a whole stack of books sitting there and they don't osmose.
It doesn't happen through, through osmosis.
Yeah, so it just hasn't happened yet. So, but anyway, so do keep that in mind. The Super Saturday Recovery Summit is coming up again June 20th. There are details on our sites. So lots of stuff. We continue, even in these trying times, to have more opportunities for you to get support and connect. So, and as always, Kristin, it's fabulous to see you. I hope that next month.
We'll continue to hope.
I was going to say,
there's lots of hope. I'm going to douse life and hope right now.
I was going to say, because we wouldn't have thought when we did this 3 months ago that we'd be going, we're still in a pandemic. So it is what it is. We don't have control over that, but we do have control over how we relate to other people. So
we do. Yes,
thanks.
Hang in there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please keep asking for help. Please engage, be of service to other people when you're able to, and share those moments of joy and optimism when you have them. There'll be little glimmers. And hang in there.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.